The best horror games might not be the coziest, but they'll definitely get your heart pumping. Last year had some killer entries to the horror lineup. Alan Wake 2, the Resident Evil 4 remake, and Amnesia: The Bunker all delivered. Some are scarier than others, but if you love creepy locations and heart-pounding chases, these are a must-play. Looking ahead, 2024 could bring even more bangers. We're hoping for more deets on the Silent Hill 2 remake and the next main Resident Evil. But if you're ready to dive into some fresh nightmares right now, this list has you covered with the latest and greatest. At the end of the day, horror games are supposed to scare the life out of you, and Alien Isolation nails that better than anything else out there. Packed with heart-pounding moments back to back, this game will have you needing a breather after each session. Of the countless titles that have tapped into the Alien franchise over the years, developer Creative Assembly is the first to truly deliver something worthy of the name. Set 15 years after the events of the 1979 Ridley Scott movie, you step into the shoes of Amanda Ripley, daughter of the legendary Ellen Ripley. The game's all about a first-person perspective, throwing you into the dark corridors of a massive space station with a single xenomorph stalking you at every turn. The atmosphere is spot on, making you feel like you're right back in that original movie. It's no wonder this game is ranked as one of the best horror games of all time. Isolation makes it feel like you're living through the film. Add in the insanely smart AI that controls the alien, plus an absolutely terrifying virtual reality mode, and you've got all the ingredients for a modern horror masterpiece. Visage is one seriously messed up psychological horror game. If you're into hyper-realistic settings and spine-chilling experiences, this is one you gotta play. It earned a spot on our best horror games links to its creepy psychological mind games and scarily lifelike environments. But heads up, it can trigger seizures if you've got photosensitive epilepsy. This first-person survival horror game traps you in a massive, haunted house where you'll be wandering through endless hallways, all while getting hit with flashbacks from the dead families that used to live there. If you're looking to scare yourself senseless this Halloween, Visage is the move. Just a heads up, maybe keep the lights on for this one. Playing through Amnesia: The Bunker is no joke. The difficulty and intense tension make finally escaping the nightmare feel like a victory lap. This game delivers on the bone-chilling legacy of the Amnesia series with its claustrophobic vibes, psychological mind games, and bloody scares. You're trapped in a bunker with only one way out, and the only thing standing between you and freedom is a bunch of puzzles, dwindling light, and shaky tunnels. Oh, and dynamite. You'll need that to blow your way to safety. But just like in Amnesia: The Dark Descent, you're not alone in there. The beast is lurking, waiting for the right moment to pull you into the shadows below. Think you can solve puzzles while dodging a nightmare creature? Good luck. Expect some heart-pounding scares along the way. This one easily earns a spot on the scariest horror games list, so play it if you dare. The Outlast Trials takes horror to the next level by not just throwing you into survival mode, but making you face something scarier, using your brain. It's got a sick blend of pure terror and some mind-bending puzzles, making it one of the most unique multiplayer horror games out there. Originally a solo horror franchise, this latest entry in the series keeps that iconic atmosphere from the earlier games, but updates it to reel in new players. With multiple trials to test your nerves, whether you're rolling solo or with your crew, you'll find plenty of ways to freak yourself out. From classic jump scares to heart-pounding stealth moments, the Outlast Trials brings all the nightmare fuel you crave. Making your own choices and shaping the story hits different in Until Dawn. Yeah, if someone bites the dust, it's on you, but don't worry, you can always restart and give it another shot. This horror gem didn't just follow the typical survival horror playbook. Until Dawn flipped the script and brought a whole new vibe to the genre with its interactive movie-style gameplay. You're not just surviving, you're deciding the fate of every character through your choices and those nerve-wracking quick-time events. You and your squad are trapped on a snowy mountain with no way off and a killer on the loose who's out for blood. But that's just the start. As you dig deeper, you uncover a creepy secret buried in the mountain that takes the fear up a notch. With tons of plot twists and mind-blowing moments, this game keeps you hooked. It's the ultimate horror ride, perfect for Halloween or streaming with your crew. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is the game that resurrected this legendary horror series, and it did so in epic fashion. You step into a creepy, rundown house in the middle of nowhere, and the atmosphere is so tense and claustrophobic, it'll keep you on edge the entire time. By the time Resident Evil 7 dropped, the series was starting to feel a bit worn out, but this game was like a shot of adrenaline. It brought a fresh take on modern horror games and movies, while still keeping that classic Resident Evil vibe fans love. Switching from third person to first person cranked up the fear factor, making every scare hit way harder. Plus, it paved the way for an insane VR experience that took the horror to a whole new level. With a killer story and super tight gameplay, Resident Evil 7 was exactly what fans wanted, but didn't dare hope for. The game's success, along with the remakes of the OG titles, brought in a ton of new fans to the franchise. This is the ultimate horror game to squad up with your friends. The level of coordination and trust you need with your crew of survivors leads to some epic and hilarious moments. Dead by Daylight is a standout in the list of horror games because it's a legit scary multiplayer experience, proving that you don't need to be solo in the dark to get spooked. In Dead by Daylight, one player plays as a brutal killer, while 4 others are running for their lives, trying to fix generators to escape and secure their freedom. It's a classic horror vibe with a sick twist on PvP action. The game features a bunch of original characters, each bringing unique skills and perks, giving you tons of ways to strategize, whether you're hunting down survivors or making your great escape. Plus, you can unlock or download iconic characters from movies like Saw, A Nightmare on Elm Street, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and showing how much the devs of Dead by Daylight really dig their horror flicks. The Evil Within 2 throws you into a dark and gritty world, packed with twisted monsters that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. Coming from Shinji Mikami, the legend behind Resident Evil, this game already has horror creds. If that's not enough to grab your attention, the nightmarish world definitely will. It's a third-person survival horror where you'll face some seriously messed up enemies. With psychological horror sprinkled in, you're never quite sure if what Sebastian Castellanos is seeing is real or just his mind messing with him. The Evil Within 2 easily lands on our list of best horror games, nailing the vibe of modern Japanese horror by making it way smoother and more accessible. The first game is solid, but the sequel takes it up a notch with some unforgettable psychological scares. The side-scrolling setup of Little Nightmares cranks up the tension the whole way through. Not being able to peek around every corner while being trapped in a world way too big for you is straight up nerve-wracking, and this game nails that vibe perfectly. In Little Nightmares, you control a young girl named Six, who has to sneak her way through a terrifying world that's way oversized for her, packed with giant, grotesque creatures. Six is just a small girl, so instead of fighting, you'll be sneaking past these nightmare fuel enemies. The tension in this contender for one of the best horror games comes from tight platforming sections while being chased by monsters. Little Nightmares earns its spot on our best horror games list because it captures that feeling of being helpless, yet it still shows you've got ways to escape. The game flips familiar, cozy spots like domestic settings and turns them into twisted, unsafe places for Six to navigate. In any other medium, using a kid like this might feel uncomfortable, and a shrunken protagonist would usually remind us of 90s comedies rather than bringing the horror. But Little Nightmares uses the fact that it's a game to hit all the right notes. The sequel, Little Nightmares 2, introduces a new protagonist and fresh terrors, but while it's a solid game on its own, it doesn't quite reach the same tension as the original. Alan Wake 2 is straight up one of the best modern survival horror games out there. Its killer mix of psychological horror and heart-pounding action keeps you on the edge of your seat. If you're into horror, Alan Wake 2 is an absolute must-cop. There are some epic titles in the genre, but none nail every aspect of horror like this survival horror gem. The graphics are stunning, perfectly blending the worlds of the protagonists, Alan Wake and Saga Anderson, along with reality and video games through expertly shot cutscenes. The narrative is intriguing and sets the stage for some serious in-game detective work and intense fights. Plus, music fans will dig the soundtrack. It's packed with killer tracks from a dope Scandinavian rock band. The first few hours might be too intense, even for seasoned players. But like any solid survival game, the more you play, the more you'll learn enemy patterns and gather resources to help you push forward. Stick with it, and you'll be rewarded big time. Still Wakes the Deep is one of the freshest entries on this list, crafted by the Chinese Room and dropped in June of 2024. It follows Kaz, an electrician thrown into the mix on an oil rig in the North Sea. After a gnarly accident, things start to get super spooky on the rig, with a strange entity lurking in the dark hallways and vents. Still Wakes the Deep is an incredibly atmospheric, tense, and gripping first-person horror experience. With an insane sense of place, top-notch voice acting, and creepy horror vibes, it's a small but punchy adventure that we totally recommend, despite some hand-holding, easy puzzles, and a story that wraps up a bit too quick. It's best to dive into Still Wakes the Deep as fresh as possible, so we'll keep it simple. It's an atmospheric horror game set in a uniquely terrifying environment. The acting is on point throughout, with British actors nailing the dreariness of oil rig life. As you explore, you'll work to bring parts of the rig back online post-accident while trying to track down on your missing crew. Definitely a must-play for fans of immersive horror like the Outlast and Amnesia series. The recent remake of Dead Space drags the game kicking and screaming into the modern day. Thanks to a serious upgrade in graphics and a particularly impressive suite of lighting systems, Dead Space looks and feels better than ever. Dead Space got a full remake last year, and it was the perfect reminder of just how special this modern classic is. Often left out of the convo when discussing the best horror games, the original Dead Space was a masterclass in survival horror, set aboard one of the most iconic gaming locations of all time, the USG Ishimura. It's tough to pinpoint exactly why the 2023 version works so well, but a lot of the heavy lifting surely comes from the detail and care given to recreating the atmosphere of the haunted space station. With some best-in-class lighting effects, Dead Space is scarier than ever. With a slightly updated control scheme, Dead Space 2023 is easily one of the best horror games released in the last decade or so, offering a solid jumping-in point for new players. Combat remains weighty as you work to dismember enemies before going in for the finishing blow. Give this one a shot if you're a fan of Resident Evil, but want a newer, more sci-fi-inspired setting. The Last of Us Part 2 is an epic sequel, equal parts beautiful and totally devastating. It follows Ellie on a quest for revenge that takes her across the country, facing off against a bunch of new threats. The combat is massively upgraded from the first game, and the visuals, facial capture, and enemy variety are on another level. If you've got a PS5 or a PS4, you can't go wrong here. While The Last of Us series is mainly known for its killer story and narrative focus, it's definitely rooted in horror. The Last of Us Part 2 has tons of scares, featuring some insane set pieces that evoke Resident Evil vibes, all while using top-notch visuals and atmospheric audio to crank up the tension and keep it there. You'll battle plenty of humans in this sequel, but it's the infected that steal the spotlight. New variants throw in some awesome twists, and the game's improved combat makes firefights more thrilling than ever. The Last of Us Part 2 got a remaster in early 2024, bringing it to PS5 consoles. Word is a PC version will drop next year, meaning even more players can dive in and experience Ellie's latest story. It follows a more grown-up Ellie as she navigates love, loss, and heartbreak across a sprawling campaign. This is an absolute must-play for fans of narrative-driven games and those who dig zombie horror.